What's happening, Sly Gang? Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance is going to be released this year in June. SMT V Vengeance is essentially the enhanced version of the game that Atlus always peddles out 2 to 3 years after the original version of the game. In my Persona Problem video, I talked at length about the impact that Persona 5 and Persona in general has had on Atlus's game development in the past few years, probably around the last decade or so. Actually, maybe 2 decades. I don't know. Time is relative. I thought I made it fairly clear that I liked SMT 5 enough to enjoy the game, but I had some major issues with the story and its characters, among some other things. With SMT 5 Vengeance around the corner, it had me wondering, will it be worth it? I figured I was going to talk about it anyway, so here it is. Here's a video. More so, this is a video on what will make it worth it. With that being said, before I talk about what SMT 5 Vengeance is going to be, I am going to talk a little bit about what I liked from SMT 5 and what I disliked about SMT 5, the original vanilla version. So one of the things that I did like about SMT 5 was the demon fusion. I think demon fusion are a key element of any SMT game. It always has been, always will be. The ways that you develop and progress your demons, that is something that an SMT game has to successfully use. And I think that overall SMT 5 did a pretty good job being able to experiment in the way that you fuse demons, trying out weird combinations and being able to have really dumb combinations where all they have are useless passives. Being able to do really stupid things like that while also being able to do strategic things is a part of the SMT experience in my eyes, and I think that you are able to do a decent amount of that in terms of the demon fusion itself. I think that visually the look of the game was pretty nice. I liked the look. With that being said, I think that this was the first time that their team was working with Unreal, and I think that some of that shows, and I think some of the optimization, some of it is the fact that it was released on the Nintendo Switch, which, you know, is not a juggernaut in terms of computing. But overall, I liked the look. In addition to the visual identity, I did like that they were going in this open world direction. I think that these games were made for a larger explorable world. When you have an entire world falling to pieces, these like tiny maps don't always give the scale that you want or need for these particular types of games. And I think that's something that I'm wanting to see more of in future Shin Megami Tensei games, is even greater ability to visually represent a world that is falling apart. Because let's face it, in almost every Shin Megami Tensei game, there is a world that is on the brink of destruction because like God died or like God farted or something like that. Who knows? Quick side note, I love how demons run away from you as you get stronger and as your level is immensely higher than theirs. That's just hilarious to me.
And move, bitch! Get out the way!
And also, I think the concept is pretty interesting. I loved the concept. This is the point where I will say spoilers. Now. So with that being said, I think the concept that Lucifer killed God and the world needs to be recreated, I think that that is an awesome concept. I think that in terms of the ability for that to generate an interesting and compelling story, I think that that concept is great. Because it's not just the fact that, you know, okay, Lucifer has killed God. That happens in almost every Shin Megami Tensei. Ultimately, that is a great killer concept. The greater demons, who are essentially lesser gods, turmoiling and fighting for power, and of who's going to be the one that recreates this world, I think that's a great concept. And I think that that concept is part of the reason why I disliked SMT5?
I would like to. I would like to be a terrorist.
All of the things that I listed, the demon fusion, the visual identity, the larger world concept, all of those things actually contributed to the reasons why I disliked Shin Megami Tensei 5. And I'm going to explain that in this way. If my birthday is coming up and you want to give me the most beautiful cake that one could ever imagine, and you do the research into what are the best fruits, what's the best flour, what's the best fats and milk and ways to make and formulate this cake, you do your research on who is the renowned baker or pastry chef that can produce this gastronomical work of art. You know where to go, what are the ingredients that I need, how do we make this happen? And the day comes and you tell me, Winston, I have the recipe for the greatest cake on the face of the planet for your birthday. And then you just hand me the plans and you hand me the picture of the chef that can do it. Thanks, but what the hell am I supposed to do with this? And that is how I felt about Shin Megami Tensei 5 in a lot of places. I think that there are these really good ingredients that they have that could be a good game. There's a great concept. The demon fusion is cool. The visual identity, I think, worked well. But they just put it in the package that was the game and said, here you go. This is the game. Because you have this demon fusion that you can experiment with, that you can work with, but you have combat limitations, like you have to be a certain level to do a certain amount of damage. If you're out of a certain level range, you just aren't doing damage in combat. So it doesn't matter how well you've fused your demons or what abilities you've given to these demons. What matters is you gotta be a certain level. If everything looks cool, but there's absolutely no substance and there's no real reason, there's no real exploration or why things have gotten to the way that they are, then what's the point? If you have this large, explorable open world, but there's hardly anything in it, there are hardly any secrets to discover, there's hardly anything that you can find, it seems just populated with random mobs and occasional side quests. You know, what's the point of this larger world if there's not going to be any depth to that larger world? There's not going to be things to actually explore. Last but not least, and not least because it's probably my greatest frustration with Shin Megami Tensei 5, it is the story. The issue is that the three main endings of the game are incongruous with the personalities and seeming motives of the characters. Or the character traits just aren't exemplified enough to care about what happens to any of them. You have the traditional law, neutral, and chaos alignments in SMT5, and these are represented by Ichiro Dazai and Abdiel, Shohei Yakumo and Nuwa, and Yuzuru Atsuta and Tsukiyomi, respectively. Ichiro Dazai is unsure of himself and often needs other people to decide things for him, and really doesn't have enough of his own resolve to see things through. And often, he requires other people to save him when he's really in a jam, or his life is on the line. Yuzuru Atsuta is top of his class, and is also a promising member of Bethel, and a capable devil summoner even before the events of the story. He often thinks of others' safety and is quick to action, usually keeping a calm head in a crisis. Shohei Yakumo is the son of a police officer who was killed by a demon who he trusted, and that fact leads to him fully resenting demons. But don't think he just hates demons. He hates weak humans too, or demons or humans that betray other people, which, interestingly enough, most people do, so I'm not really sure why that's included. Now, these are all things I pieced together from multiple playthroughs, but so much of these details can actually be missed if you aren't running around talking to every NPC. Don't get me wrong, finding additional hidden traits and bits about a character through NPCs and environment can actually be really good, but if you do it correctly. But what happens in SMT5's story is that we're simply told what that character and their motivations are through expository cutscenes most of the time. The law alignment basically says,
They ain't believe in us. God did.
I think Ichiro Dazai is actually one of the best exemplified characters, as you actually see him being useless and helpless most of the game. I think this makes sense for the law alignment, as he believes that someone else, more capable and more powerful than him, should be making the rules and giving him direction. But his progression through the game doesn't really make a lot of sense to where he ends up. Even up to the moment that Bethel falls apart, he's still going with the flow of what everyone else is saying. And it's only through Abdiel giving him encouragement and reinforcement that he finds confidence. It's just, you see these bits and pieces of him being a weakling, and then Abdiel is like,
Stop being a bitch and come on.
And then he's like,
my goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that? Hammocks!
Which serves to ingratiate himself to Abdiel. A confidence which we don't really see grow much throughout the game. We see it in some parts, but it doesn't even fully seem realized when we see it happening on screen. Ultimately, he ends up on the top of a building, muttering to himself about being the blade of God or heaven or something like that, and then he magically produces hair gel and spikes his hair after he gets rid of his sucker hat.
Boy, if you don't get...
You could say that it's a metaphor for him no longer being a sucker, or that the writing is just bad and it's really stupid. We do see that the relationship with Abdiel actually serves to ingratiate himself to Abdiel and thereby her ideals, which is to uphold the order that God put in place upon taking the throne of creation. This is all well and good until you consider the fact that Abdiel...
She is totally a bitch.
Abdiel is not likable whatsoever. There is absolutely no nuance given to her obsession with upholding the clearly crumbling order of the slain god. She's not nice, she's not considerate, she isn't given any interaction outside of those with Dazai that exemplify wanting the good of others. And ultimately, Dazai is the one that holds her knowledge that allows her to be a Nahobino, so it kind of begs the question, does she actually care about him, or is he just a means to an end? I would venture to say that hardly anyone chose to side with Abdiel and Dazai in their first playthrough willingly, mainly because she's just very unlikable. Even if you care for Dazai, which I could definitely see that being the case, Abdiel is such a presumptive asshole that she doesn't even care to listen or give room to others. As someone with an interest in theology and symbolism, I think there could have been an interesting statement here given the fact that Abdiel is so set on the fact that God is not dead, even though all of the evidence around her says otherwise. They even mention different things like Shekinah glory, Shekinah meaning the presence or the manifestation of God in Hebrew text. But none of that is really expounded upon. It's just said as some sort of aside. To sum it up, the Chaos Alignment basically wants,
Mind your own fucking business!
As for Yuzuru Atsuta, I think his stance makes the most sense overall, and I think is the most nuanced, which is a very low bar. He has been involved with Bethel since before the game, and he knows full well that the bureaucracy that has determined the fate of Tokyo has disregarded the well-being of the very people it was supposed to protect. It makes sense that he ultimately wants to side with Tsukuyomi / the Prime Minister and restore a world with the myriad gods and multiple gods governing their respective cultures. The problem is, Yuzuru is supposed to represent the Chaos Alignment, apparently. You know, the world where there are still gods governing the different cultures is supposed to be chaotic.
Okay.
I guess in comparison to the strict world that Abdiel has in mind, yeah, any world is chaotic, but that's still fairly lawful. That's about as chaotic as the world we know of today. Most countries in the world have a government. Are there conflicts and corruption? Yes, but these aren't warring city-states and tribes. There's still order. Unlike Shohei Yakumo's world, where he openly admits that the world that he creates will result in anarchy. The goal of the neutral alignment is,
We don't give a fuck!
ultimately, Shohei wants a world where full human potential can be realized without the stifles of demons and gods. And that sounds great until you ask him about the humans who can't protect themselves, to which his reply is,
Fuck 'em.
Nuwa, his partner, is a goddess of creation herself, and she's on board with that? Yeah, that makes sense. You would think that a character whose father was a police officer, someone who's supposed to be a public servant, and is supposed to be looking out for the common good of all people, would have a slightly more nuanced approach. And maybe this is supposed to be a statement in the fact that, you know, he dislikes his father because he was too trusting or he was too kind or something like that. But that then begs the question, why does he walk around in the police uniform that is presumably that of his father's? It doesn't really make sense. All of these characterizations and the fact that you are presented throughout the game with pseudo choices make much of the decision making trivial. The ending that you get is based on a single decision you are presented with in the last hour or so of the game. Only one ending has the choices and quests you completed hold any weight, and that ending has a quest line that doesn't really even connect to the results of that ending, which makes me feel as if the quests weren't really worth it. The lack of characterization and real development of the characters beyond this is their role and they're playing it is part of what makes me dislike much of this cast. When people die, I feel nothing. There's an entire main part of the story where the eponymous goddess of the game is actually killed in front of you in order to save you and to give you life. And
it didn't feel good, to be completely honest. Yeah, I guess it was a good moment for that. I never thought I could care for someone that would bring me to tears.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that the story was really weak. And, you know, beyond just the characterization being bad, there's also just pacing issues where you go from everyone in your school being attacked by demons because the veil is being torn apart between this proxy world and the real Tokyo, to fighting and storming the Demon King's castle out of nowhere. There was no reference to the Demon King anywhere in that early game. I know because I've played it 3 times. Story is really rough. I've gone on that long diatribe to say, what does Shin Megami Tensei V
Vengeance
bring to the table? So over on the official Atlas West YouTube channel, you can actually find this video. It is the complete guide to the Shin Megami Tensei V
Vengeance
overview. What is being added? How does it compare to the original? What is different? And I think it does a pretty good job of letting you know what you have in store if you're getting this game. I think this is actually pretty cool. Now, at one point in the video, they say there's like 50 different things that have changed. The best thing about it is that it is a multi-platform release. This actually works to answer some of the questions for me of whether or not this will be worth it. Ultimately, whether or not this game is worth it is something that you have to decide. And, you know, you and I might have different opinions about what will make this game worth it. You know, some people have seen this and they're super excited. Some people are frustrated. And both of those are understandable to me. But let's jump into this because I want to talk a little bit about what is actually included in this here. And so this is actually one of the things that is most important in my assessment of this, is actually this whole story introduction, which is there are 2 canons in Shin Megami Tensei V
Vengeance.
There is the canon of creation and there's the canon of vengeance. And the canon of creation is essentially the story of Shin Megami Tensei V. The new story content seems to be all in canon of vengeance, which gives me a lot of pause because, as I just stated, one of my biggest concerns and biggest frustrations with Shin Megami Tensei V was the story. As much as I am curious about the canon of vengeance, I don't know if I am willing to buy a $60 game for a whole other story that I don't know if it's going to be the same level of story or same amount of story. So yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to pay $60. That's the thing that I'm concerned about here, is that some of my biggest annoyances with Shin Megami Tensei V was the story. But from what I see in this video, there isn't anything really added in terms of the pacing of the story or details in the story. It doesn't sound like there's any added quests. I think that some of the DLC quests that were in the original SMT V will come in Canon of Creation. If they don't, I think that's a little bit of a rip off myself. So, I mean, this is a little bit of a disappointment for me. This seems kind of weird to me. It's more work probably than they're willing to do, but it does not make it any less disappointing. Yeah, there are going to be new demons added here. And on top of that, there are a couple of things that are pretty interesting in terms of the combat depending on who is in your party, what demons are all together in your party, there are special Magatsui abilities that will trigger instead of them just being one-off things that one character will do like they were in the first game. It's basically kind of like joint actions that will happen. And I think that's that does add some of the strategy that I was talking about of like how you put them together. One thing that I did think was cool is that they're going to have these unique skills that are unique to each of the demons. There are apparently other things that they're going to be doing that increases what you can do essentially with Magatsui. Yeah, I think trying to add onto the systems that didn't get enough play is a good move when it comes to enhancing a game. It's like, okay, well, what are the core systems that we have here? Magatsui, it's said to be a big deal all throughout the game of Shin Megami Tensei 5. It didn't always feel like it outside of the super gauge that fills up, and then I get to use a super ability when it's all said and done. Yeah, you know, I think in terms of the combat and the demon stuff, I think they're on track there. That's one of the things that you have to get right in Shin Megami Tensei. And I think that this is shaping up to be pretty fun in terms of the gameplay. It does have the stupid thing in every game where you've got to add a photo mode where they're like, you know, we spent a lot of fucking money to make this game look good. And that's basically what this element of the game is. Is this, I mean, I don't know. Can you guys in the comments let me know if you really care about taking pictures of your demons in the Demon Hangout? Like, is that something that people were clamoring for that I like? Because I see those features in games all the time, and I could not care less. As you can see, the Demi-Fiend from Shin Megami Tensei 3 can join your party, which is the main thing that makes me think that you will be able to ultimately have all of those quests from Shin Megami Tensei 5. You'll be able to actually do those quests in this game without having to get additional DLC, which would be, I'm not going to say cool because I feel like that should be baseline. If you make an enhanced version of a game, everything in the base version should be in that. That seems ethical to me because, I mean, other than that, like, it just seems money grubby. Yeah, and basically the rest of this list is just quality of life stuff. They do say that there are new subquests, as you can see here, but it's not fully clear how those play into the game overall, which is the thing that gives me pause, because I'm like, yeah, is it just a more fetch quests and like, hey, go kill this demon so that I can get an ice cream cone?
Oh my god! Wow!
I think that if you go through this list, it's definitely more than just a patch. It is not the type of thing where it was like, oh, we could have released a patch and done this exact same thing. No, I think it is an enhanced version of SMT 5. Now, that gets us to the ultimate question. Is this worth it? This game is going to be $60. I would say check out Shin Megami Tensei 5 first before it comes out on June 14th. But you have to check it out before June 13th, because after June 13th, they're going to be delisting the game on Nintendo's shop.
Nasty bitch.
That's right. They're going to be delisting the original game. So unless you have the physical version of the game in this new gaming ecosystem where people need to get used to not owning the games that they purchase, you know, that you pay $60 or $70 or $80 for, or $130.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Yeah, you need to get used to not owning that game. That, you know, you shouldn't be able to just play it anytime you want to.
Boy, if you don't get
This whole ecosystem where companies are just like, yeah, you paid money, but we don't owe you anything. That's essentially where we are. And that is bullshit. When I'm asking the question of, is it worth it? It goes beyond now, oh, is this gaming experience just going to be worth it? And I think that's the thing that is annoying me the most about this. It's not that there are two different stories that they're going to shoehorn some plot into. It's not that I don't even know if that second story is a full story or if it's just 20 hours of, you know, additional bad writing. It's that the company that is producing this is solely focused, in my opinion, on covering their asses, because I asked the question, what is the reason behind delisting a game? Oh, because they have a more expensive version of it that is going to come out, and they don't want you playing the old version, even if it's cheaper. So, is Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance worth it? I don't know. I'll tell you after I download it for free on PlayStation Plus.